Okay, and we are live.
Okay, I'd like to call to order the January 21st, 2021 meeting of the Park and Recreation Advisory Commission meeting. Um, and I will first off start with a roll call.
Sorry, just one second.
Okay.
Okay. So roll call, if you could please say that you are here and that you are able to hear and speak, that would be great. Just one second. Commissioner Tencher?
Here, and I can speak.
Okay, perfect. Commissioner Means?
Present, I can hear and speak. Thank you.
Perfect. Vice Chair Charmaine?
I'm here and I can hear you and I can also speak. Thanks.
And Chair Marciniak?
Present, and I can hear and speak too.
Okay, and we'll let the record reflect that Commissioner Riker is absent. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up is the Pledge of Allegiance. So here we go. I guess stand in. Thank you, Samantha. I pledge allegiance to the flag.
Pledge allegiance to the flag
of the
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it
Which
stands,
one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you for the first
Perfect.
meeting of the new presidential term. I'm looking forward to it being a lot different. All right, next is the adoption of the agenda. Are there any additions or corrections to be made to the agenda? Hearing none, I will move a motion to have the agenda approved.
I'll make a motion to accept the agenda as written.
Will I have a second?
I'll second it.
Commissioner Means?
I second the motion. Correct.
All right, with that.
So we'll do the roll call.
Yes.
I have to do the call, sorry. Commissioner Tencher?
Aye.
Commissioner Means?
Aye.
Vice Chair Charmaine?
Aye.
And Chair Marciniak?
Aye.
Perfect, thank you so much.
Okay. Now the next item is the approval of the minutes from September 17th, 2020 and November 19th, 2020. And I'd like to thank Samantha for putting these together. They're quite a lot of minute notes in here that required a little bit of reading to make sure that what was going on. So is there any corrections or additions or deletions that want to be made to the minutes? Hearing none, do I have a motion to approve the minutes?
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes from the last two meetings.
Is there a second?
I'll second that.
All right, it's been moved in second. Vote.
Commissioner Tencher?
Aye.
Commissioner Means?
Aye.
Commissioner Vice Chair Charmaine?
Aye.
And Chair Marciniak?
Aye.
Perfect.
Great. All right. Next item on the agenda is public comment on items not listed on the agenda. You know, it is limited to 3 minutes if it was public speaking, but we can extend that if we need to. The committee may, however, briefly respond to statements made or questions posed by the public, ask for clarification from staff, and refer the matters to staff, request staff to report back on matters, and request staff to place a matter on future agenda items. So is there any public comment?
Yes, we received 2 public comment emails. I feel like I might be delayed, so if at any time I'm not coming through clear, please let me know.
Okay, we'll just wait for the delay. The delay is fine.
Okay. So the first general public comment email is from Debbie Wellborn and Lloyd Penrod. Dear Samantha and PRAC commissioners, we are writing to express our opposition to taking grass or bark out to place new tables and benches in all the parks. We live across from Yountville Community Park and witness how valuable the grassy areas are and how much use the grass area gets. It also provides a great deal of calm and cool to all parks in town. We would like to see some kind of document that expresses what we value in parks so that future decisions are based on guidelines that protect the integrity of the parks for residents and visitors. Thanks, W. Wellborn and Lloyd Penrod. And then the second email from Pam Reeves. Dear Samantha and PRAC commissioners, I am writing to express some concern about the discussion that took place during the PRAC meeting concerning park benches at the park. I feel that there has been some misunderstandings compounded by the fact that we were not able to meet in person to comment as the discussions are being held. I have been in discussions with various residents in town who have brought to my attention what I was beginning to feel at the last meeting, that we did not really discuss the downside of additional tables and benches, the loss of grassy areas. The fact that grass area would be lost was not brought up until the very end of the discussion and was more of an aside than a discussion point. I would like to amend some of my previous comments about the need for any additional benches and tables to reflect a deep concern for the attendant loss of grassy areas as a trade-off in any of the parks. When I brought up the concern that perhaps there were not enough tables for drop-in visitors or residents, I was hoping for discussion of the allocation of current tables. Is it possible to break up some or any of the current group areas in components, or perhaps remove or rather pre-designate tables from a group area to be left as drop-in tables? The thorough accounting of what is in each park now was helpful, but the focus moved the discussion to new table locations rather than evaluation of existing configurations. I understand that there is no appetite to lower fees for use, but does the income and intensity of use of the larger rental areas justify that they only be rented in such large chunks? Perhaps this has been covered, but I do not know the answer to the question. In any case, I do not support additional tables or benches if it means a loss of grassy area. I am concerned that this table bench discussion will lead to a piecemeal approach to changes at the parks without an overall evaluation of what we value about the parks in general and each park specifically. It is important to approach any significant changes, and loss of grassy areas is significant to the parks, be evaluated for its current and long-term impacts and the impacts to the general usage of the park. For that reason, I would like to urge the PRAC to table the discussion of additional tables and chairs and take up a discussion of a standard document that governs decisions about park use, space, and aesthetic. Pam Reeves. And I'll just double check that we haven't received any further public email or public comment emails, and we have not.
Thank you, Samantha.
Under this item.
Yeah.
Yes.
I believe that the park bench situation was brought up at the last meeting to bring a discussion about how to deal with drop-in people using tables and stuff. I know the staff had gone and did some preliminary work, but I don't think there was anything put in the budget or whatnot to proceed with this issue. And with that, I'll put it up to Steve, who's.
Thank you, Chair Marciniak. First, what I want to let everybody know is we've heard of the conversation about, are we listening to our residents and to the people presenting? So the first thing I want to remind the PRAC is you heard some public comment and some conversation that was presented to you that indicated that perhaps the parks could benefit from additional tables and benches. So you had a conversation about, would that be something to look like? So staff has presented some concepts. So the first thing I want to say is, one, you're being responsive and the town is being responsive to the dialogue that was brought forward in the appropriate forum to look at that. You have not, to your point, Chair Marciniak, made any formal recommendations or discussions. A conceptual of where could and might potential tables and chairs. I'll also say there was no focus on removal of grassy area. There was a presentation on several parks that showed potentially where additional could go, some of which are already DG or other areas, and tables could be separated or added and to create the drop-in. Others were suggesting where people are currently using and there's no tables, and others had communicated, although not directly in the same forum, that a table or a bench might be appropriate. I bring that all forward to you in the sense that no formal recommendation or proposal has brought forward to you for action. It is simply a conversation brought before the appropriate body to look at what might be out there. So again, that's where you're at. You haven't made any recommendations to the town staff to add any specific locations. And the conversation was started, ironically, at the request of some of the people now suggesting that it be tabled. However, other people have responded in somewhat in the community and agree that in some of the parks, there may be room and it may be appropriate. Your staff is also taking seriously the concern that perhaps there should be some additional drop-in table area, especially at Yountville Community Park, to offset the concern that everything is rented. So we'll continue to look at ways to potentially see if there is a way. We are also hearing the concern, as you are, about the grassy area that I'm assuming is on the very eastern edge there. But not all parks are situated and have a grassy area issue. So remember, part of that conversation was also looking at parks greater than just simply Yountville Community Park.
Yeah, thank you. Anybody else? Dave?
Yes, thank you, Bill. These comments to me, again, I agree with what Steve just spoke about. But in addition, I think these are both probably going to be long-term issues that are probably going to be looked at on our today 7C discussion on park inventory and visiting processes, procedures, and the fact that we will be looking at what's going on in all the parks, what we have in inventory there, what the vision is for those parks. And at that time, I would think that's when the additional parks, benches and or tables would be appropriate.
What I would say is, we'll talk a little bit more about that because I do have some feedback. I think that's in general, I think that's a very sound and logical approach. However, I also want to acknowledge that, the town has been very nimble and capable of responding and solving some issues and improving things timely and quickly. So if something was apparent and needed to be addressed, I would think we want to address it. Now, if we're talking about a longer term process, and we will, 7C is going to be a longer term process and discussion that is more than just picnics and tables and chairs and benches and others. So I think we can do both if there's an appropriate need, and that would obviously be a judgment call on your part in terms of recommending if something was more immediate. But it does appear that the people initially commenting are saying perhaps that issue for additional tables is not quite as great as they had initially indicated.
Yes. I just want to
I think too that,
go ahead,
oh, I'm
Samantha.
sorry. I think too the intent in clarification of, if I read it correctly, the public comment was the idea of looking at the reservable areas first, and how do we make that more accessible to drop in traffic was something that was discussed. But, you know, to Steve's point, if the commission thinks there is an immediate need, that could also be something we discuss under 7B, which is our upcoming budget and the review of the capital improvement program and budget discussion. So, you know, as we move forward with our budget process, if the commission did feel there was an immediate need for some changes to benches, that's something that would be considered during that. That's all.
Thank you, Samantha. I just want to make one little comment, and this is a note of probably the community park, and it's not for anything else but a comment. I think when we were talking about the redwood trees having some stress on their life, the park benches were chained down into the group area so that they would not be moved underneath the redwood trees to protect them. So this may be part of the issue, and we probably should encompass the whole issue about the health of the trees. The placement of the bench is for the reserved parking picnic areas. So this is a more complex issue than just putting it in various areas there. So that's my observation from a couple of years ago on the park. Thank you. Any other comment? Or with that, we'll move on to the next item, and that is the administrative item, discussion of possible action on new administrative policy language for special events in town parks.
Great, thank you, Chair Marciniak. So as you might recall, we've discussed this concept at 2 meetings now. At the November Parks and Recreation Advisory Commission meeting, we discussed special events more in detail, both town-sponsored and other events held in parks. The commission gave staff feedback and direction to draft administrative policy that would limit the number and frequency of special events that to be held in any of the town's parks, town of Yountville parks. As per our current municipal code, any special events in their application process can receive a conditional permit from the town manager or designee that can require conditions that may include required date, time, or location of the event. Once the commission has reviewed and approved this new administrative policy, the policy would be brought forward to the town council for review as well. So based on the feedback from the commission, public and public staff, the following policies be added to the special events administrative policies in relation to events just for town of Yountville parks. So that wouldn't be town events in general. This would limit those in parks. So number 1 would be to limit non-town sponsored special events to 1 event per park per month. It would also, number 2, special events, including non-town sponsored or town sponsored, will not take place on back-to-back days in any one park. And then number 3, special events, including non-town sponsored or town sponsored, will not take place on back-to-back weekends in any one park. So along with these changes to the administrative policy, staff will provide verbal or written updates on pending special event applications, as well as town-sponsored event planning at each Parks and Recreation Advisory Commission meeting. So I'm happy to answer any questions that you have or take any feedback. The commission can also amend or update this before it is brought forward as well, or before approval.
Okay.
Thank you.
there was a public comment on this. Do you want to read that first, or?
Yes. Sure. So item 7A, dear PRAC commissioners, special event policy number 1 is listed in the staff report dated January 21st, 2021, would appear to allow a possible increase of events, non-town sponsored, in our parks. I would like the commission to discuss the ultimate consequence of this language on actual usage of the parks. It could lead staff to suggest to applicants alternative months that do not currently get booked for events in an attempt to accommodate potential users, thus elongating the months of park event usage. It also allows to approve uses dependent on availability rather than suitability. I would suggest that there should be accompanying language about how to prioritize user organizations if none exists. And that's from Pam Reeves. And I'm happy to respond to that, and if you'd like.
Thank you. I would like any other comments from any of the commissioners here on this issue?
Samantha, did I understand you had additional comments that you wanted to make in response to that?
If you feel it's helpful, I can answer some of the questions or fill in some of the gaps that you may be wondering based on that letter, if you feel like it's helpful.
Yeah, my question,
yeah.
I don't have any problem with extending the season of using parks, because as long as the intensity of use is sustainable, is equitable, if it goes another couple months, so what, as far as I'm concerned. But what I'd hate to see is in the busy months, I think we thought there were maybe 5 months that were the active months. Does this new policy, it seems to me the new policy actually decreases the intensity of use, but maybe I misunderstand that. So if you could help me better understand that'd be great.
Yeah, so as we discussed, there is an event season, really. There's about a 5 to 7 month period of time where an outdoor event makes more sense. But that being said, it makes more sense. It's not part of our municipal code or even our administrative policy to limit months when events can be held in town. We do have a special event in January. We have the annual New Year's Day run that typically takes place. So we don't currently limit when a special event can take place in town. As far as the intensity of use, I believe that the feedback that we were given was the issues arise and the neighbors feel significant impact when things happen, whether it's back-to-back days or multiple back-to-back weekends in a month or something like that, the current intensity of events that had experienced obviously prior to 2020 was really when things were happening in succession. And so the administrative policy draft is really in response to that. That being said, we do have a lot of other things that are not necessarily, in this policy language that we evaluate. And I think I gave you a lot of information on that in previous meetings, is that when we get an event request for any facility in town, whether it's our parks or otherwise, because we get in a typical normal year, we get over 30 special event applications, and only 5 of those happen in our parks. So there's requirements for businesses to submit for certain things. There's events that may happen at the community center or things that come through our roads or on our paths that we also evaluate. And every time we get an application, they're being evaluated for the suitability of that event. And so it has to meet capacity issues. They have to have, parking plans. They have to have certain requirements from public safety and from our planning and building department. And so, these three things are just the directly addressing the issues that we were brought forward with. But if you go back and review the special event application packet, you'll see all the things that the town evaluates for suitability when we get an application. And so I don't believe this potential policy is really going to increase our ability or our desire to have more events in town. That's not the intent. So does that answer your question?
Yes, thank you.
I'll fill in the gaps.
Thank you, Samantha. Any other comments or questions from?
I think this is, well, Sam, you did what we wrote here, the 3 items, and it makes sense, and it does cut back on if it has to back the weekends and things, and it shouldn't be a problem, I would think.
I look at it as this adds more guidance and kind of a structure for how we're going to approve a group wanting to have a special event in this in one of our parks. And I think the other feature is down at the bottom when you express that notifying the Park and Recreation Advisory Commission about future events, just so we're aware of what is happening. I don't think we'll be denying or recommending that these applications don't be made, but we want to know just what the impact is going, and we can monitor it a little bit better. And if we need to make a change to the policy, then we have the information available on a routine basis to go ahead and do that. Are there any other comments? I think we need a motion to approve these items as going, and bring those up to the council for their action.
I move that we accept this action as written. I think it's well clarified. I appreciate Alan's input to request that. Thank you, Sam. So I make a motion that we accept it as is.
I'll second that.
Okay. So we'll have a vote on that.
Commissioner Tencher?
Aye.
Commissioner Means?
Aye.
Commissioner Shermaine?
Aye.
And Chair Marciniak?
Aye.
Perfect.
Thank you.
That item passes. Thank you.
Okay, now we go on to the next item on the agenda is the capital improvement program discussion related to parks and recreation projects in the town 5-year capital improvement program for fiscal year 2021-2022 through 2025-2026. Let's see, I think that's up to you, John, to bring that in. Okay.
Yes, thank you.
Are you able to see?
Go ahead.
Oh. Are you able to see the presentation?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. Yes.
Okay. Thank you, Sam, for setting up the presentation, and thank you, Chair, for the opportunity to speak. Good evening, Commissioners. I am John Ferns, your Deputy Public Works Director, and I'm here to give a brief presentation about the town's upcoming capital improvement program as it relates to parks and recreation projects as the town staff prepares for our annual budget for town council. Next slide, please.
Maybe. Sorry, just a second.
No worries. So I'll just keep talking as the slides catch up. I'd like to start off with a quick refresher regarding the capital improvement program. A capital improvement refers to a major physical expenditure to be undertaken by the town. Examples of that would be land acquisition, building construction or renovation, and the most common is infrastructure construction and or replacement. And the capital improvement program is the tool that we use to guide capital investments, where we optimize our resources to maintain and construct the town's facilities by evaluating our available resources and to determine our ability to deliver projects desired by the community, all with the goal of the health and safety and quality of life here in Yountville. Next slide, please. So how we do this is fairly straightforward. The town of Yountville adopts a budget every year. It's an annual budget process that we go through. And as part of the budget process, the annual operational budget gets adopted by town council. Inside of that budget is the capital improvement program budget, which is a 5-year document that identifies projects in the 5 years, puts them in a time slot, and identifies the fundings that go with it. And as we're preparing the budget every year, staff looks and considers the long-term planning phases for things beyond the 5-year horizon, where we're looking 6 to 10 years out for needs, priorities, and financing opportunities. Next slide, please. So while the capital improvement project considers many categories, the most common are streets and transportation, water and wastewater reclamation, and water distribution. Two of the significant ones inside the budget are civic facilities and parks and recreation. And I did this screen so you can see the abbreviations that we use, but tonight and in general, the parks and recreation projects are generally in the CF, civic facilities category, and the parks and recreation, the PK category. And you'll see those designators on the projects as we go forward. And the theme that you're going to see and hear tonight is we are placing the projects in out years given the current economic environment. So most of the projects that we're talking about tonight are general funded, and given the current economic environment, we're being conservative and placing projects that are on the list a little bit further out than they might have been, in order to conserve money and save budget for a near-term event that may or may not happen given external forces that are happening in the world right now that we're all familiar with. So next slide, please. Jumping right into the project list, you'll see PK0024. That's the Yountville Community Park shade structure. We are currently seeking a grant to construct this or install a shade structure at Community Park. So this project's on the list, but the funding hasn't been granted to us because we're still seeking a grant to fund it. So it's a project that's on the list, and if we receive the grant, you'll see it come forward. In the meantime, we just want to talk about it and keep it in front of people's attention. But again, it's not a project that is currently funded. Next slide, please. So moving into the projects that are on the list for sure and are funded or will be funded, the gym floor resurfacing project is on the list. Community facilities project number 13. It's funded by the general fund. It's an estimate of a $50,000 project. We put it in fiscal year 23-24. We're comfortable doing that because the floor itself has been receiving all of its scheduled maintenance. It's in good condition, and it's had less use over the last year than it normally would have. So we're comfortable maintaining it and pushing that one out until fiscal year 23-24. Next slide, please. Next project is a community facility project, converting the barbecue area to storage. The barbecue area didn't turn out to be the use that everybody wanted it to be. And as you can see from that picture, it's already acting as a storage facility. So we've identified a project to enclose it and convert it to permanent storage. Again, it's a project that we're comfortable pushing to 23, 24 because again, it's already currently being used as storage and it can wait until such time that we're comfortable spending the money on it. So that one again has been pushed forward as well. Next slide, please. This one, as we're finishing Hopper Creek Path, the bridge project is nearing completion. We're looking towards our next park path project. This particular one is a new path in Vineyard Park. It'll go east of the pickleball courts and create a circular shape with some picnic tables in it. That project is a park project, so as the PK designation, it's funded by the general fund. Our estimate is around $150,000. And we're also putting that out a year or two with the idea that we'll feel more comfortable spending those funds in the future. It is an exciting project that we're looking forward to as we're wrapping up our other park trail projects. Next slide, please. This one is resurface the play surface at Yountville Community Park. The slide says Yountville Community Park, but it really applies to the play services at Forester Park and the Tot Lot also. Those ADA compliant surfaces generally have a 5+ year life cycle, and we're now at the 5-year cycle. They're actually holding up well. This particular funding source is a little bit different in that it's a facilities fund, but the facilities fund is money diverted from the general fund for the purpose of updating facilities. So we're keeping an eye on the surfaces. They're holding up well. So our plan is to hold off and replacing them until they either fail or we get to a time where we're more comfortable spending the money. So with that, I think next slide, please. With that, I'm available for questions and any input from the commission. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you, John. I appreciate that. Very good presentation. I just have a couple quick questions here. The shade structure for the community park, which picnic areas was that just picnic area 1 or was that picnic area 3, 4, and
I am at a disadvantage because I don't know the picnic area numbers as well as I should, but I believe it's for the picnic area adjacent to the play structure.
Okay, so that's picnic area number 1. Yeah, okay.
It's only the one play structure.
One place area, which gets a high use, I have to admit. That's a preferred place for birthday parties for most families.
Yes.
I think there was a play structure or a shade structure there before we did the remodel, if I'm not mistaken, right, Sam? Didn't we have a shade structure up there at one time?
No, we didn't. No, there was no.
No, the site one was actually under the redwood trees, and so that was just grass there at that point. Gotcha. But part of the reason this was brought into the CIP as well is we were hoping that the per capita grant money that we're getting through Prop 68 was supposed to be more than it ended up being, and so we were hopeful that we could include the shade structure project in that, but that funding source did not come through as high as we had originally thought. So we're continuing to leave it because it is an important project, but looking for some grant funding for that as we move forward. As John said.
Thank you. Let me see. Does anybody else have any questions?
I have two questions, John, that you did not respond to there. One is 0026, which is replacing roofs on the bus shelters. It's part of Parks and Rec, item 1. And item 2, 0028, which I think is probably more important, is a generator switch at the community hall, which I assume has to do with the fact if we have fires again or something along those lines. So can you speak to both those items?
Yes, the replacing the roofs on the bus structures, we didn't include because I didn't think it's a community facilities project, but it wasn't Parks and Recreation specific. It's still moving forward. We didn't push the money out because the roofs are still in good condition. So we're still planning on doing those. We just pushed it out similar to that. In terms of the generator project, you are correct. It's important. We actually have Napa Electric under contract doing electrical engineering work on the 2 buildings there. So what we have currently is Community Hall, the bigger building, has a new permanent generator which powers Community Hall. That generator has enough capacity to also power the community center. Currently, staff has to bring a temporary generator over and plug it in so community center can be powered up if the power was turned off. Our goal with the electrical engineering is to tie the 2 buildings together and have them be powered by the new stationary generator. And the challenge, there's a couple challenges associated with it. We would like it to be have an automatic switch gear so it comes on automatically. However, we have multiple moving parts with the 2 buildings are powered by 2 different PG&E meters, and the solar powered for both buildings and the parking lot have to be turned off as the generators turn on. So we're working on the design of that. And at the end of 2020, Steve and I worked on a PG&E resiliency grant where we applied for funds to do the work that we just described. So once Napa Electric comes through with our design, we'll have a cost associated with it. And then we're still waiting to hear back from PG&E on the resiliency grant. If it comes through, we would apply it to that project and have a full standalone generator, automatic switch, and have it all be.
I understand. Thank you for clarifying.
A little bit of background also, Commissioner Means, to your question on the bus shelters. First of all, we're looking at redoing the roofing on them because, as many of you know, they have the historic wood shingle. The town has banned wood shingles. You cannot install a wood shingle roof anymore in town. I live in a neighborhood that is full of and I have a home with wood shingles. I can't replace a wood shingle. So one of what we're trying to do is twofold right now. We're trying to set a good example, remove a potential fire hazard that we've now had some demonstration. And in our current situation, we're deferring and delaying because while there is a potential, we're also recognize the cost savings and the economic impact. So again, this will be a project that we'll continue to keep on our list and move it forward as our fiscal condition improves. And most likely we will replace with a standing seam metal roof that will be consistent with the aesthetic, but also reflect fire safety.
Thank you, Steve. And again, I mean, having been in business for many years, capital improvement and rolling 5-year budgets, this is being very pragmatic and understanding where the financial side of it's coming from, as well as what is actually needed at this point. So I think it's a good idea.
Are there any other questions from the commissioners here?
I think that the 28th, the generator issue, I mean, unfortunately, in the last week, there were fire issues in the South Bay area in places, and this, you just don't think about it, but it's how things have changed with the weather and things that generator may be used more and more, unfortunately. So it's a good idea. Thank you.
Well, I appreciate the forward thinking and trying to delay projects that may not be, although a financial burden now, we don't know about our budget. So projects that we can push off to the future without any impact to their usefulness is very appreciated. The only thing I did think about the playground area, we will be monitoring it, that if there is some issue setting up, that it is put in a higher priority to fix, especially with the situation now when you have good weather. Those parks do get used a lot, and it needs to be monitored and bumped forward if needs to be.
Will do, yes, for sure.
And I think on that note, Paul, that, just to keep in mind with the COVID situation for families and everybody, the need to get outside. And so, that's one place that it's safe and there's activities and it's appropriate for their skill and age level. And, they're getting used much more because kids aren't in school doing it's just, we're just in that time period right now in this situations that, I know if the park areas are much busier for some of the neighbors and things, but people need to get out and
Well,
have them.
I do enjoy seeing that it is being used. Most mornings, there is at least one or two, either a father and a child, or a mother and a child, or two, actually using the park. And this is 9, 10 o'clock in the morning, and it is well used. And they do need to do the outside activities.
Yeah, and we have an ongoing playground inspection program that our public works certified staff do, I believe, every month. And so that is something that they inspect regularly and document that as well. So thanks for pointing that out, Paul. It's very important.
Yes, it is a high priority, and I know we may be able to push it out, but may not at some point. So I don't think there's any action item we need to take on this. Is there? I just appreciate the fact that we're kept abreast of all the activities that are currently due. Oh, there's one question about the bathroom for the 2-bathroom exchange at the playground area, community park. How is that progressing? Is that affected by the budget?
That project is not affected by the budget, and it wasn't included in this list because it is a current project that should be underway before June, when this budget that we're discussing gets adopted. Sam and I are working on I'm supporting Sam in the grant application. We have the site topo done. We're working on the site design. We've met with a contractor out there to discuss demolition of the existing structure, as well as constructing the concrete to support the new structure and place the foundation. So that project is moving forward. We're actively working on it.
Very good.
Also on the current projects is the bridge. Is that still planned for February at Oak Circle?
Yes, the contractor is currently working on the foundations on either side of the creek, and we're working on we've been actively working on the details with the bridge manufacturer, and they're assuring us that they're on schedule for delivery the week of February 1st. Might not necessarily be delivered on the 1st, but the goal is to have it placed that week. And just anecdotally, it's being manufactured in Alexandria, Minnesota, and will be delivered via truck to California. So that'll be exciting when it shows up. And the path has been completed for some time on the south end. So the path turned out well, I think, and it's just waiting for the bridge to make the connection.
Yeah, it looks great.
Yeah.
It's wonderful.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
Okay, well, thank you, John and Joe, for your work on this. With that, we'll move on to the final item, administrative regular, which is number C. It's discussion of park inventory and visionary process. Now, this is a part that I brought up to Samantha from hearing some comments from the neighbors. What is the guidelines and goals for the park? And I presented this to me as a two-part question: does the commission see the value in setting up and establishing a guideline vision plan for the town parks? And then if they do, how do we proceed with doing the process of establishing these documents. So with that, I'll open it up to discussion on this.
Actually, Paul, there was a public comment that probably needs to be read into.
I'm sorry. I appreciate that, Dave.
Yes.
And if I could, I think there's also, I'd like to present a little bit of information and framework for the commission before we proceed. And also a party of a conversation with Paul. And I want to, first of all, say that one, it's not an atypical or unreasonable request that we have a planning document and a reference document with regards to our parks, facilities, and programs. But I want to be really clear that it needs to be, if we're going to look at something, it needs to be comprehensive, and it's not just something around a park, because Parks and Recreation includes the programming. So I'm going to use some slightly different language than Paul did, but we're going to talk more about two categories. One would be a good and comprehensive cataloging and assessment of each park and facility and program. And that would include mapping what's there, pictures, a nice presentation. And this is all good stuff. This is the stuff that staff can incrementally work on. The other thing I will say is we are in the middle of a COVID pandemic, and this is a fairly significant staff undertaking, and it's going to be metered in terms of our ability to support and resource. So it's not going to, if we're going to do it in-house, it's going to take a little bit of time, but staff sees the value in doing this, what I would call initially the cataloging, mapping out pictures. What do we have at each park? What's the history? You know, collecting the historical documents that may exist to show how something went together, where it came from, what the intent at a various point in time, what intent might have changed. So we can capture a lot of that, and then we can do what I would consider a cataloging and assessment, and that will take some time. Then we can present that to the commission and the council to talk about what is an appropriate community conversation in terms of what is the community's expectations with regard to parks, recreation, and programming. And I'm being very comprehensive here, because then we can talk about what is the type of a survey, what's missing, because as many of you know, I've been here going on 15 years now, so I fully expect that in about a year and a half, we'll start the dog park conversation again, because it comes up and I don't mean it, I'm saying it in a light manner, because it is people come into the community and they're looking at, well, what do we have? What are our services? What are our programs? Where are they at? So when you think about an assessment document and you talk about an inventory, all right, where do we do this? You know, somebody may say, well, I'd like a child youth playground 2 to 6 near me. And we go, we're a small town. We focused on 3 parks. And these are where they're at. So part of that assessment would be, we would go in and catalog what's in each park, what services and programs, what are the activities. So, and that's what I say. So the first thing is, we need to do all of that. And you have to do it comprehensively and bring it together so that the community can then look at it and go, oh, okay, what might we want that we don't have? What is important to us? What do we treasure about? And some of the questions that were shared today make sense, but it also needs to be done collectively, because somebody in an immediate area might not like something, but it has a historic community-wide use. I will mention pickleball, you know, one of those things. We did I think collectively a smart thing by reusing an underutilized resource, but as we've now learned, while pickleball is our largest, and I will say this again so everybody hears this, it's our largest by volume activity participant, not everybody loves pickleball. And they question, and they would rather see money spent perhaps someplace else. As we know from our dog park conversations, in theory, everybody loves a dog and a dog park until you talk about whether it could be added or put into a park that exists that didn't have that initially design. So I think when we look at this, the first part is we've got to know what we have, what's in it, and then we do the community survey and visioning at a later point. And then we also will need to check in, and this will be a great opportunity for the commission when we have that inventory and assessment completed. Then we check in with the council and we start talking about what type of community survey, visioning, and questioning do we do. But I also need to be realistic where our staff time and priorities are. We can support this, but I do have some competing issues right now with the pandemic and where we're at. But Samantha and I, Joe and John, really see good value in this and putting, but the first part is doing all of that cataloging and assessment so that we don't end up doing something on a piecemeal basis and talking about a vision for X without knowing where Y, Z, and 2 + 2 are. Does that make any sense in terms of an approach? And I think that is something then that we can get behind and support. And then one of the things we also suggested is as we get going, perhaps there would be value for two of you working with staff to see if the approach that we're using to catalog and present this, and I'm going to be old school here and I apologize, but some of you can probably relate. I used to have binders, binders. So you would have a map, you would have a list, what goes in. We can do this all electronically and digitally, and we can do presentations. We can, pull up some of the minutes from the previous council actions of when they approve things. But to me, that's what I want to put together so that then we can have that community conversation, about, because part of that history of, I'm going to use something that doesn't come up in conversation, but Sam and I, we found that there's actually some good historical documentation on the intent, for example, of Vandeleur Park. Vandeleur Park is designed as a passive park. Some of these uses have definitions. So Yountville Community Park is a community park. In planning and in Parks and Recreation, a community park actually has a definition in terms of size, purpose, and role that it plays in a community. Neighborhood parks have a definition. So part of this is putting all of this into a document that can be used and then shared with the community. And then it is something, because I don't think any of us on your staff disagree that we want to be respectful of what a future change or use of a park facility might be. But it needs to be done in that, we have an opportunity here, I think, to do it in a thoughtful, thought out method, but it might take us a little time to get there, if that makes sense to you all.
Well, thank you, Steve, for clarifying this. I guess I didn't voice that quite clear. I didn't look at it as an overnight process that would.
Oh, I know you didn't, Paul, and I just want to be, I'm also responding a little bit to some of the public comment that was talking about moving right into the visioning, and we won't be doing visioning for a while until we get the assessment and cataloging done.
I have to agree that we do need to have the baseline set up first before we can proceed with this. And that may take 6 months, 9 months or something to get that together before we can go on to the next step of it. I think this is a step process. I see the value of it as being a guideline for future commissioners that come onto the board, that they have an understanding about what each park is set up to be, so that they can make informed decisions and bring that forward. So it is a long-term project, and I don't want to put a timeline on it, because it may take 2 years to get it done if we want to do it correctly. And I don't want to put something together that is not going to have value to it. So I know there's comments here. First, I don't want to get off track. I think we ought to read the public comment first and then get on with the discussion from the rest of the group here. Samantha?
Absolutely, yes. So item 7C, this is from Pam Reeves. I absolutely agree that this proposed park visioning project should be done in-house as a community. The parks are a physical manifestation as a community and should be powered by and designed with essential input from the community, excuse me. I would suggest that a park survey be created that can elicit raw comments on parks before staff starts on their vision of the parks. This way there is an opportunity in a way that fits community vision before things appear in print. If the PRAC thinks a survey is appropriate, I would suggest questions that ask for concerns and opinions rather than a one-size-fits-all multiple choice answer that is just sort of closest to their opinion. Examples. Questions should be open-ended and elicit feelings. What park do you frequent most in town, and what does it draw you? And why does it draw you? Excuse me. Why do you think parks are important? What general attributes are important to you in a park? In example, certain equipment or facilities, grassy areas, gathering places, walking potential, views. What is it about those things that you have described that make them important? What things would you want to protect park areas from? An example, lights, noise, traffic, behavior. Have you had a specific experience that illustrates the need for protection? Do the current parks meet your needs? What things would you change in order to meet your needs? Do you feel welcome in every park in town? Have you experienced every park in town? Perhaps list all the neighborhood parks and town parks with checkboxes. Since this will be a long process, there is certainly time for a survey to be published in utility bills in the Yountville Sun and the town website. And again, that's from Pam Reeves, Jefferson Street.
Thank you, Samantha.
And I'll just double check. Yeah, we've received no other public comment.
Okay. I think these are very valid comments, and I think they could probably be incorporated as we proceed on down the steps.
I think I take them as suggestions and allow the commissioner to have discussion on it as well, besides public comment. And we haven't talked about this really together within our group that we're here for as commissioners is one aspect. And Steve, I appreciate when you were talking about putting this together over the months and things that, you know, if you need like a few of us as volunteers to go around to help the staff doing things, I think some of us would be happy to help out with that.
Yes, I think that's good. Any other comments?
I appreciate Steve putting a comprehensive framework for this process. But I take a little bit different view than Chair Marciniak. I think there should be at least a framework of a timeline so that the steps, I don't mind if it's a 3-month gap or 6-month gap, but then there can be, it serves as a guide to keep focus, I think. Otherwise, these projects can become so all-consuming or they become without accountability. And so I would advocate that when we do put this framework together, that we say, okay, phase 1 is mapping. We think our best estimate is that it's going to take 3 to 6 months. The next phase is, whatever else the next phases are, because then I think it becomes more clear what the objectives are, and I think it's less likely to fall by the wayside.
That's a very valid point, Alan. I like
and
that.
I think staff is very supportive of that. I think we would exactly how we would approach this type of a project. right before the general plan process started, we had actually budgeted for a Parks and Recreation strategic planning process, but then we pulled back because we thought overlapping with the general plan would just be too much for the community at one time. And now we're definitely in a different financial situation as far as trying to solicit a consultant to do this work. So I think that coming up with what, I almost see it as mimicking what would happen if we did hire a consultant to do a strategic planning process for Parks and Recreation. And so internally staff could come up with, a draft timeline that we think is manageable, and bring that back to the commission with kind of the outline of that plan for you to give feedback.
And I do think we're going to, oh, I was going to also say at some point we need to take this framework and go share with the town council to get their support and buy-in, especially as we move forward with the surveying and visioning aspect.
And Chairman, I think that not to put Pam Reed's comments on the back burner, but as Steve was saying a moment ago, this is a long-term process, whether you're mapping historical documents, pictures, identifying inventory, the lifetime of that inventory. You need to do all that first before you start looking at what the visionary for the future of that particular park or group of parks is, I think. So I think these comments are valid, but I think they're necessarily appropriate in the beginning part of this process.
Yeah, I think the timeline that staff put together for this kind of puts that at item number 3 on there, that we start putting this together, and that is the point where we actually start going out to the community now that we have the baseline information, and go ahead and work on this to how to communicate and get good feedback from everybody. And the key is to get good feedback and as much feedback as we can, so we can digest this down into a good usable document for us. So I think we're all—
and typically I think—
Go ahead.
I was just going to say, I think it's the research part of it is fairly, I don't want to say easy, because the historical documents part is going to be the most time consuming, because we already have documents and things that we use for, assessing everything, every bench, every play equipment, has been documented in Public Works for our replacement program. So we have a lot of data. It's just bringing that data all into one place that's usable for and accessible for everybody. And we also have assessment on things for future replacement and things like that. What I started dabbling in a little bit was in our records management system, trying to find more of the historical documents. So the one Steve was mentioning was when the town received the land that is Vandeleur Park, those original documents, hey, what that was supposed to be used for. And so I think those are really valid as far as that future visioning process. Historical piece is going to be fairly time consuming to put that, as part of our analysis. But I think we can definitely, I'll, get together as staff and go through those bullets and see, what we think is an appropriate timeline to bring forward. And of course, that timeline is always going to be dependent on no other giant emergencies or pandemic shutdowns and things like that. But I think it is important to have something to guide us.
Yeah, I think that the historical part especially would be really appealing to residents, and especially for people that have been here for a long period of time, to give historical backgrounds, the folks that have been here for many, many years, more than 30, 40 years, et cetera. But be nice to have that for the next group of folks that are going to be moving into the community, because I don't think probably many people even know that story on Vandeleur.
Well, and if I could also, Veterans Memorial Park has a whole structural history in terms of the property coming out of the relocation of the freeway, the tie-in, the connection from the veterans home, and the decisions that were made related. I mean, those are simple ones. Toyin Terrace is actually a development requirement. So that was a children's playground. Forester Park, also for those of you in the Washington Park. So, you know, what I find fascinating in some degrees is even as small a community as Yountville is, we have a lot of people that they know the park around them, but they don't necessarily know or use the other parks. And also, I think many of you know that some of our biggest assets are actually not parks, they're our path systems. Our path systems are widely loved and utilized by a number of people. And so when we inventory and collect, and then we talk about what's the programming, you know, going on 15 years, I can tell you now that we do certain programming now that the town didn't do then because we have the community center. We have the ability to do something. We've invested in pickleball. Pickleball didn't exist in Yountville 15 years ago. We didn't have a court or maybe even a knowledge that pickleball existed. Maybe somebody did, but in terms of where it is, bocce. The bocce courts came and they have their history. A lot of people may not realize that the bocce courts were initially significantly funded by donations from community residents and then came into being managed by the town. So I say there's some interesting things that it will just take time to collect. But when you talk about use, you know, in some ways, our parks, you know, cataloging where they came from and what their purpose was won't take us too long. It's just time consuming. But we have some neat stuff to put together. And in many ways, because of our size, we've focused on, you know, each park has a particular identity and focus generally, because we don't duplicate them. You know, if you go to Napa, you're going to find some larger neighborhood parks that generally have the same use, but they're all geographically located. You know, one's in this neighborhood, one's in that neighborhood, so that they meet those needs. That's not necessarily an issue in Yountville, although people become very attached in some cases to the parks next to them or the activities that they really use. Bocce court members, you know, bocce club, pickleball. We have people that were very attached to Vandeleur Park as well and very protective of making sure that the landscaping is consistent with what was supposed to be there. And that's part of the community fabric. And in terms of where we're at, and I apologize, I'm doing a little home renovation and I have a dog that's a little agitated by everything being moved all around and not quite where it's supposed to be. So she's thinking she needs to protect me from something that's going on in the other part of the room that's not an issue. But anyway, I just think that, you know, staff is, what you're also hearing is hopefully we think this is a good exercise, but it is indeed an exercise that will take us time to get to the community visioning survey discussion.
I think the goal is to have that vision.
Oh, go ahead.
I think the goal is to have this vision set up for us. The process, I think right now we really do need to have a good timeline figured out so that we could continually monitor this in future meetings and keep it progressing, even if it's an agenda item every time, so that we make sure progress is being made on this. And if there are problems, what is the issues with that? So,
yes.
I
would suggest as next steps. Is that? I'm sorry, Paul.
No, I was going. I was waiting for you. Kind of. What is our next step?
Okay. So I think that as next steps, I would just suggest that in our March meeting that staff will come back with kind of a comprehensive plan and timeline for you to look at. We're also in setting up a joint meeting meeting with the town council and the Parks and Recreation Advisory Commission. So this could be a topic for that joint meeting as well. So we'll keep you posted on that. And then we can discuss obviously the timeline. And then if there's, a desire to appoint a subcommittee of 2 members that would kind of help to guide that, what the document looks like and the content and that type of thing. And then I'll also ensure that going forward, we'll add this as an agenda item to each meeting, and we'll bring updates. And then of course, any type of review or documents, but at the very least, an update on progress at each of our meetings. So does that sound agreeable to everybody?
Yeah, until conclusion, so that it's updated and ends when we finally have the document out there. So, okay.
Exactly.
One comment related specifically to this, and then I wanted to play off of something Steve said. I think, Samantha, as you think about this, whether it be the historical aspect or any other part of your process, if you can think of a way to involve the community a little bit. Steve, I respect the council and this big picture, but a lot of times I'm hearing that people feel the bus is already, or the train is already going by the time they get involved. So I'm not saying, we need to change where we're going, but just where there's opportunity diplomatically to involve members of the community without stepping on anybody's toes, I think would be wise.
Yeah, absolutely.
Absolutely,
I think that's super important.
It is, but I also think what we're trying to say is that surveying is going to come a little bit later, and trying to, if there's a way for us to include, and maybe you and I can talk more of some of those ideas that you might have, Alan, but we're not uncomfortable with that. It's just, I do think there is a role for a community survey and some broader, but the visioning really needs to, in terms of what do people want, we need to make sure that we do that at a point in time where we've completed the cataloging so that they're able to do that. So I hear you, and I think there's a way.
I'm not disagreeing with you at all, Steve. I'm simply saying that I think we'd be well served, whether it's, in the context of, the noticing for the PrAC meeting or something like that, that, we just make sure people are aware that this process is going on. And
I think to that point, Commissioner Tensioner, I think we'll put some stuff out there to talk about that, because and one of the reasons we talked about a 2-member committee is when we start putting, and again, I'm going to use my binder illustration just for old school purposes. As we start putting stuff together and putting it, here's some background, and I'll say here's some background on paths. Here's a map of paths, blah blah blah, the definitions. Here's we can even probably put together a Dropbox, and I'm using or something, so that people can check in. You all can see what the data dump is looking like, if you will, for lack of a better word. The parks, the pictures, some of the historical documents. So I definitely think, we can certainly share. We can write and include in the, in the Parks and Rec section that we're doing this project and the timeline, so we can get that out in front. I think I have a better understanding of what you're talking about now.
And that's exactly it.
Because what I'm saying there is, one, we'll start by announcing the process and where there's opportunities to share, and then letting people know that there'll be even a bigger opportunity at this point.
Right. Good. And then
I think something that was really valuable with like the school sculpture project was reaching out to the community as a whole. I mean, I received those historical photos and stories from community members through that process. So I definitely think there's a lot of ways that we can engage our community in this process. That's not just the surveying and the feedback, but just keeping everybody abreast of what we're doing and how, you know, if anyone has historic photos or stories or anything, you know, about the parks and facilities and programs, you know, those are all things we'd love to hear and collect as well. So I think it's very valuable.
So now I'd like to share the second part, and that has to do with how lucky our family has felt with our two sons growing up in this community. We have enjoyed, as they have aged, different parks and the pathways that connect them. It's so easy to get around, and it's because other parks and rec committees, it's because of staff, it's because of previous councils. We're really, really lucky here that we have the resources that we have, and our boys and we have really enjoyed the parks and the trail system. So I think putting this all together will just add interest and hopefully be the cherry on top of the ice cream.
Thank you, Alan. You just made me think of one point here as Steve and you were talking about this. Is you were talking about maybe having a link on the town website where the data as we're progressing can be downloaded so the community can view this stuff as it progresses through, and add a comment section for them in that, so that they can make comments. They may see something that triggers their mind that we may not have observed on that. So I don't know if that's possible. I hope it is, so that as this process goes along, we're ensuring that the community is involved with it.
Yeah, I definitely think building a web page for the process is important. And then we can talk further about how we can integrate community feedback, you know, as it moves forward. Sometimes having constant feedback is difficult, but if, you know, we have time and we can compile that feedback, because it would really come before you guys to discuss as well. You know, I'll brainstorm that a little bit, how we can best integrate feedback as the process moves along and not just at, you know, at one point. I think we can work on that.
That'd be great. I think we're really coming up with a good plan and a foundation for this thing that will really set this thing going forward. Any other comments and questions?
I think David's trying to share.
Oh, Dave, unmute.
So sorry. All I was to say is, Paul, that I think it was very good of you to bring this to the attention of the town staff and the commission. Obviously, we just have discussed parts of this in the past, but this is really, you know, pretty thorough, and I think this is great for the community. Thanks for bringing it to their attention and bringing it to all of us. You did a good job, Paul.
It's just taking the thought forward and comments, and I think with the feedback I'm getting from this, I think we can progress in this and make a very, very valuable situation, not only for the Parks and Recreation, but for future parts of the town that may not have that issue, you know, are this document and stuff, so that we really have a good community input and
as Steve said earlier, and you also stated, you know, specifically for future commissions, you know,
yeah.
So somebody coming in does not know what we have done for the last 2 years or 4 years or ongoing, you know, to understand why something happened is tremendously important. So it's very good.
So with that, I don't think we need to take any action on this, do we, Samantha? I think we.
So it was just for discussion and feedback.
Yeah, and I think we'll have a good idea what's a better idea what's going on with this on the next meeting. So with that, I will bring that item to a close unless anybody has any last minute to the staff informational report, parks and report up holiday and winter spring event programs planning in summer of 2021. Thank you, Sam.
All the things. Yes. So you may have seen this presentation. I brought it forward before the council on their Tuesday meeting. So if you watch that meeting, this may be repetitive. So excuse me, but it, fascinating. You're going to see it again. So I took this opportunity just to put together an outline of what we've been working on in the fall and winter months. Obviously, it's very challenging with COVID, and we're not doing a lot of the things that we're used to doing, like the meeting in person and having events and those types of things. But that being said, I couldn't be more proud of my team and their creative minds to be able to take what we do and do it differently so that we're still bringing the community together, whether it's virtually or otherwise, and just helping to kind of continue, keeping people connected, continue bringing smiles to faces, even though, most of us are fairly isolated, I think, in our lives at this point. We're almost a year into this. But I just wanted to share with you, I have a little presentation with some photos. So I just wanted to share and highlight a couple of things with you that we're especially proud of. So are you able to see the screen presentation? Yes. Okay, perfect. So one of the things that we started back, as you know, when Yountville Elementary School was open, we had an after school program every day that we have had for over 20 years. And so when the school closed, we were kind of unsure of what that was going to look like coming into the new 2021 school year. And so that changed even more once we had the pandemic and all the changes to education through that. So we decided to offer a fun club program in the after school hours from 3:30 to 6. And so it's a small cohort program of just 10 kids that come consistently. They either come Monday, Wednesday, or we have a different group that comes Tuesday, Thursday. And it's just recreation. It's just fun. It's craft. It's playing. And we only take the 10 kids and it was going really, really well. And it gave an outlet to some of these they're not getting, outside of home. So it's being around other children of their age group in a safe manner, being with our team of staff that are so wonderful. And then we actually had a team of local volunteers that were coming once or twice a week just to have one-on-one time with each camper or fun club member as they wanted. So it wasn't mandatory, but parents' time is spread so thin these days that sometimes having the opportunity to have, one-on-one, whether it's to play a card game or a puzzle or read a book, is really lacking a lot of times as we're all just spread so thin. So that was so wonderful. The kids absolutely loved it. But as we started to approach the new shelter at home order, and we saw cases rising, we took a break from the program with the volunteers just to kind of further limit any exposure. But when the stay-at-home order went into effect, we did pause the fun club program, and that when the stay-at-home order lifts next. So we're really proud of that. We're also very proud of the golden ticket program. And so, when we had in-person classes, we would average anywhere from 120 to 150 or more members each session, each quarter. So although we have less people, it's an amazing feat what we've achieved here, because The program is for adults 50 and up. Many of our participants are in their, mid to late 60s and 70s up to 90s. We have 90-year-olds in the program. And so to be able to get that demographic, many of them online and on Zoom and participating, whether it's on their laptop or their phone, some of them, or their computer, was really an amazing feat. And Jennifer is just a saint. Many, many hours were spent getting people online and figuring out their devices. But we are so proud to have continued that program. This in the fall, we had 62 members, and so far for winter spring, I think today, as of today, we're at 74. So they're online Monday through Thursday, all different kinds of classes. I know, some of you participate or your spouses participate, but it creates just an amazing connection. So some of these people, very rarely see another person in person and face to face because of COVID. And so, knowing how to learn Zoom has just opened up their world, because then they're able to Zoom with family members, they're able to Zoom with friends, and then they come to class and they have such great camaraderie. So the picture here is one of our exercise classes, and you can see, people in there exercising, but it's just, obviously the physical aspects are really important and they're really beneficial, but the mental health aspects of being, having something to look forward to, knowing that you're going to do something, especially for our retired folks, has just been really amazing and instrumental. So a couple of things we did this fall. We did the costume contest for Halloween. We did the drive-through root beer floats. We did a pumpkin carving contest. And then our very first turkey hunt, which was very successful. And we had a lot of turkey hunters in town. We actually got a couple of calls. People thought we were releasing live turkeys in town. I think I may have told you that, but I thought that was pretty hilarious. And then for the holidays, we typically, the month of December or late November into December is just crazy for our department with events. So it was very different this year. And so we had the virtual town and tree lighting that we helped to support and offer with the Chamber of Commerce, and that was online. The turkey hunt was so successful that we offered a snowman hunt. So that was, again, very exciting. We would get calls to say, "Are today, because we're coming up or we're coming out." So Marjean's right there, Paul. You see her?
Oh, yeah, she's there.
With her bottle of wine that she wanted.
He was the first one to find one.
Yeah. We also offered the holiday light contest in town, which was really fun. And we had 17 entries, which was great. So we hope to just build on that next year. We also offered the holiday story times. Excuse me.
Who's the reindeer?
So we did 3 Sunday. Huh?
Who's the reindeer?
We did 3 Sundays. Yeah, that's me. We did 3 Sunday story times where kids could log on, and then we also mailed them a hot chocolate packet if they registered ahead of time. So that was a lot of fun. Unfortunately, we started with Mary Ann Lyon, who, as you know, if you know her, was a music teacher for her whole career. So she did singing, and she's so charismatic. So she set the bar really high, but it was a lot of fun. And then the community cookbook, which is here finally. So we're really excited that it finally got delivered after quite a few delays, and we're starting to get those out. If anyone's interested, we do have extras, so you can still buy one, and it turned out beautifully. So we're really excited about that. And then I'd just like to make sure, we're telling, what are the other things that we're doing that have kind of come out of this pandemic. And so, the Yountville Neighbor Network, we premiered that early on with the door hangers and outreach to connect volunteers with people in the community who needed help. We still have some people that are using that service, and occasionally still get a call. We distribute meals, as you know, for the Napa Valley Unified School District in Yountville. They have since pared that down to just 3 pickup sites once a week, and so we're not a site for that anymore. We staff sit on tons of, early on it was a lot more. It's come down to more manageable point, but phone calls and Zooms with Napa County and public health and keeping abreast of everything that's going on. And then also with COAD, which is Community Organizations Active in Disaster, they have a ton of subcommittees. So food resource subcommittees, emergency preparedness, childcare. So there's just a lot of different committees that staff sits on and participates as well. And I'm really proud because us, along with a lot of all the other cities really in the Napa Valley, have redeployed some staff to assist with the vaccination clinic. So 3 of our Parks and Rec staff are actually spending 1 day a week at the drive-through vaccination site through Napa County, assisting with that process with data entry and traffic control and different things. And so I'm really proud of them for stepping up to do that, and that's going really well as well. So we've really taken on a lot of different duties during the pandemic and during emergencies in general. So I just like to make sure that people know that because I don't know if it's a common knowledge. So coming up, we really are looking forward to some return to normal. I think we're cautiously approaching our plans for summer, knowing that, we may be able to offer music in the park, but there may be still some limitations to that. So how can we plan to be nimble to adapt to that? We're hoping, to do Yountville Days and music in the park and movies in the park and summer camp and kind of return to some level of normalcy, knowing that early in the summer, we may still have, some limitations and requirements for how we do that. So that's really what we are working on now. And I'm happy to answer any questions that you have. And then I also just want to say I neglected to add the Public Works update on projects and stuff that's going on to the agenda. So they'll follow me, Paul. So don't let us forget them.
Put that on the agenda.
Okay. All right. Thank you for your time.
Any questions? I think you're doing a great job. I mean, it's hard in this time to put a program together where you can't physically interact with an organization and a structure that really needs a lot of interaction. But you're admirable for doing what you've done.
Kudos to today's. It was really nice that all the comments that were made at the end of the council meeting last week after your presentation too. So thank you. You was doing a wonderful job.
Yeah. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you for all of your support.
And thank you, Samantha. Item A-B is Joe Tagalabashi's staff report for projects from Public Works.
Actually, John Ferns would probably be the better person to take that over, but I'm happy to fill in if John needs any help from my end.
Okay, we'll put you on there, John.
So we talked about the bridge project. That was one that I was going to bring up and discuss. We also talked about the generator status at the community hall, community center. Other than that, we're right now with COVID and the use of the parks that you were referring to earlier, we're doing about 80 bags of trash a day. So park staff is really busy keeping up the pace with the use in the parks and making sure that things are shipshape for the park users. Everything's been going well. It's just keeping them busy. Leaf season is officially over, so we're happy to have leaf season over and are able to catch up on the basic maintenance chores. And with that, I'm available for questions if I didn't hit any of the projects that you want.
Can I add a couple of things? Yeah,
Please.
so just to add to what John was saying about the routine with COVID, we're cleaning the park's restrooms every day. Every park's restroom gets cleaned every day. and then with the picking up of 80 odd bags of trash. The other challenge that we've had is some of the staff is up against max vacation because they just haven't been able to take vacation time. So now we're having people take an odd Friday or a Monday off. So that just leaves us down another staff member when we really could use that extra body. And we also haven't been using the seasonal help because we've been trying to recognize that the budget is in some under some pressure, and so we wanted to try to conserve and preserve as much of the budget as possible. So the people that, number one, the person that used to help with the trash was at an age where he didn't feel safe working in COVID environment with the trash. So he basically, we'd had him since I've been here. He just said he couldn't do it anymore, which was a big loss for us because he was very passionate about it. He did a great job, and it filled a big need for us. And then we have someone helping us with some of the park's maintenance activities, and both those positions are currently, we're not using either one of them. So that puts staff under just a little bit more pressure. Not to saying that we're not able to do our work, but it makes things just a little bit, it makes things just a little bit more difficult because of the staffing issues. So we're getting to everything. We're not getting to everything as quickly as we'd like sometimes, but we're continuing to try to manage, maintain all the parks infrastructure, all the other infrastructure we have. And I think they're doing a great job. And I think the one other thing that we should mention is that the parking on the east side of Washington Street, the wall has gone up. It looks pretty good. The landscaping's in. Some of the bigger trees are in, and it's kind of getting to the point where it's almost finished now. And I think, admittedly, I'm only one voice, that it came out great. We had a great partner. They did what we asked them to do and have continued to do what we asked them to do. And we're looking forward to hearing more. We've heard quite a few positive comments, but we look forward to hearing what other people think going forward.
I wanted to comment on that parking project. I don't have per se a real problem with the aesthetic, but I do have a problem with the execution, one of which I think could leave the town vulnerable for some sort of liability. And that's how they have chosen to tack on at the top, outside the I-beam stringers, their top support member. I'm particularly concerned about the short ones. The long ones seem to be pretty solid, but the short ones are just, they're too nailed in, and I just
we agree. And those aren't, we were talking with the contractor about that. We're trying to figure out what the right height is, and if that height is required, you're going to add a piece of the beam in, so that has a little more structure. Ultimately, we'd like to just take that board down, and that's kind of what we're leaning towards now. We want to see, get some vehicles up against it, see where the lights hit it, and make sure that we're not impacting any of the neighbors around the park with any of the lights that could be coming off some of those vehicles. So that's our real concern. We think it's high enough, and we think we'll be able to lower that. But if we don't, the contractor is going to add a little pup onto the beam and then make sure that we got some structure to hold those tiny little pieces in. So we don't disagree with you, Commissioner Tencher.
Good. And then just as I've said before in so many things that we do as a town, we have a certain level of quality, which is very high. And I know you'll make sure that this particular project finishes up, because I know there's some sort of desire for getting it done, as I think we all do, but I just want to make sure that the town's level of quality is adhered to in this project, even if it's under the...
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think one of the things we were most happy with is the contractor and the project manager on that project we got to pick, and we picked that person because of their attention to detail and quality. So his interest is the same interest as ours, and I think we couldn't have got a better partner in the process. And I think the project just little details that because we don't build that kind of stuff, that's not, we're part of the design team, but having somebody who's constructing it and making recommendations along the way certainly helped make it a better project. And we're really happy with the partnership we had with that team. And the end result is what you see is, I think it came out really great. So we're looking forward to getting that thing into use and seeing some of the landscaping mature and just grow in. It's going to look great.
Yeah, I think it looks wonderful. It's I walked through it over the weekend, and just the landscaping that just got in there, but the rock wall, and it's be really nice. I'm hoping no one backs into the wall there, but that'll just be something to, trial and error, I'm sure.
Yeah, we got parking blocks in, so we think we're going to be in pretty good shape. And it's a pretty thick timber, so probably do more damage to the car than the wall at this point.
Well, I think most of the parking in that is the reserved part. The permit park is at the lower end. The upper end, farther away from most of the beams, is the general parking as it goes. I'm not quite sure where the division is there, but it actually, the public parking is north of a lot of the heavy beams. So it's going to be RH that is backing into that. And
correct.
21 of the 21 spaces to the south are permit parking for RH, and 24 spaces on the north half are public.
So to clarify where all the cars are really going to be on that.
Right.
They'll be pretty much to the north end of it.
And
the only thing I noticed when I was there, when you had the picnic area right there, where there's an access part from the parking area down into the park, there's an electrical out box that on a post that's right around as you come around into the park from there, and it's not too far. You might want to take a look at that to see if it isn't obstructing or can provide a hazard for people coming into it from that entrance.
Okay, we'll take a look at it.
Thank you.
Otherwise, I think it looks very good. From the park view, I was leery of it being kind of overwhelming, but it does not look as overwhelming as I anticipated. And it actually is a pleasant area there. Any other comments?
I had another question regarding the leaf blowers. How are you finding uptake in terms of your staff with the electric leaf blowers? And sort of, if you could update us just briefly with what you found and what you're thinking going forward.
So are you asking us about how we are using the
yes,
leaf
yes,
blowers? Yeah. So, I think we were pretty early adopters of the technology, and you pay a price for being an early adopter. So the technology's gotten better. It's gotten a little bit cheaper. The batteries have certainly become more long life, which is what drives our decision on which tool we use. The tools that we bought, the big difference that we noticed, because we've demoed some newer pieces of equipment lately, and they're just much more user-friendly now than the early models. Simple stuff like the triggers on the early models cause a little bit of fatigue, where they've kind of figured that out now. Some of that, they seem to be a bit more powerful, so they're figuring out how to kind of wring every single amp out of those batteries and get the blowers up to a little higher velocity. And like I said, the battery life seems a little bit longer. But, just speaking as a person who we typically would have our staff meetings, management team meetings on a Tuesday morning. And that's when they would, because when the school was going, that the principal preferred them to do that work was sometime around 9 10. And of course, we'd all be getting ready for a staff meeting and those blowers would be going like crazy. And one of the first things I noticed was the battery powered blowers are significantly quieter. It's not to say that they're completely quiet, but they're certainly not anywhere near as invasive as the combustion engine blowers. So that's a nice surprise. And as the tools get more widely used and they become more a part of our normal use as a culture, I think they're going to get better, more easy to use. The batteries are going to get longer lived and they'll get cheaper, and people use them more. We certainly will. We'll start using other tools as well. We'll probably transition into battery powered trimmers and that kind of thing at some point as well, because all those batteries are going to be interchangeable with a variety of tools. And once those tools become reliable and dependable, and we can get the life out of them that we need to be able to do our work, it'll just be a normal transition for us.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Anybody else? Carol, did you have? No. Okay. Thank you, Joe and John. Doing a good job. With that, we'll go on to the final item on our agenda is the commissioner comments and reports. Does any commissioner have any comments or report to present? The only comment I would like to do is, although Wendy's not here, I'd like to thank her for her time and commitment that she had for being a commissioner on this commission, and wish her the best of luck and really appreciate her her service to the Park and Recreation Advisory Commission. And with that, I'd like to also welcome Dave Means to be back on for another term, and a new member, Christopher Reyes, to be a member on our Park Commission. So next meeting, we'll have another commissioner here. So very good. Thank you. That's all I have to say. With that, if there's no other item on that, is there a motion to adjourn the meeting?
I'll go ahead and make a motion that we adjourn the January 21st, 2021 meeting of the Yountville Parks and Recreation Advisory Committee.
Thank you, Alan.
I second the motion.
All right, Dave. Roll call vote.
Commissioner Tencher.
Aye.
Commissioner Means.
Aye.
Vice Chair Shermaine.
Aye.
And Chair Marciniak.
Aye. Thank you all for the meeting, and the next meeting is March.
Thank you all very much.
All right.
March something. Thank you very much. Have a good night.
You too.
Bye.
Yes.